What's going on, guys? I think at this point I probably just need to stay off of eBay. But I was looking on there the other day, and I probably need to take a break from it, honestly, because I have like 4 of the same camera, or 4 cameras that do pretty much the same thing. But I saw this T2i for really cheap, and then they had the send an offer option checked. So I lowballed them, a pretty low offer. And they accepted it, and it took them about 2 weeks to ship it, so I'm thinking that it was probably somebody who just had it laying around, didn't know how to use it. The shutter count is 31K, so even though the body is looking rough, they pulled the grips off, they pulled the cover off. The LCD screen is not in that bad of a shape, but even though it looks kind of rough, it still is only a third of the way through its life cycle. So I know that from installing Magic Lantern, which I'll talk about in just a second. But basically what I have is a $30 Canon T2i that I'm just gonna make sure works, put Magic Lantern on it, and resell it on eBay. But I want to make a quick video about this, set up a shot, test it out. Yeah, see what this old T2i will do. I've got Magic Lantern on here. I've put some profiles in there. Let's see what it looks like with a kit lens. Okay, what we've got here is a Canon T2i. These things came out, I think 2011 or 2012. You've got the 18 megapixel sensor. It shoots really nice looking photos. It's got video. It was one of the first cameras that had HD video, but it really doesn't have anything special, you know, from the factory. It was a pretty popular camera because it was affordable. You could record HD video, and you have a mic port right here on the side. So you have a mic port, a remote port, the AV, and then a micro HDMI. Really, this thing is not anything super special, but with the cost of everything going way up, it's kind of crazy what you can get these cameras for now. If you're wanting to start making videos, or if you just like to mess with cameras like I do, you can get these for the same price that you would get for a stop at the gas station. It's kind of nuts. Like I said, I picked this thing up with a kit lens for 30 bucks on eBay. Did have to pay some shipping, so not really 30 bucks, but almost. Let's go through the menu really quick, then the Magic Lantern menu, and then we'll go over some test footage. So right there, I've already got Magic Lantern on this. If you're having trouble getting Magic Lantern, what you've got to do is take the firmware, the 1.09 from their site, put it on your memory card, and then unzip it inside of your memory card to get the Canon firmware to be able to put the Magic Lantern on there. It took me a while to figure that out the first time I did that. That's the only place I could find the 1.09 firmware on Earth. All of the Canon links are broken, but got a little sidetrack there. So this is how I'm going to have it set up. I'm in manual up here, or I'm in video mode up here. I know I just made a video talking about I've been shooting everything in 30 frames per second, but I'm going through another 24 frames per second deal. So that's what I've got this set up in. Autofocus mode is the face detect and live view. This thing does not have continuous autofocus in video, but it's not that big of a deal. Autofocus during shooting, you need that on to be able to adjust your autofocus. Exposure and autofocus lock, I have it right there. Remote control disabled, that's for the Canon remote. It doesn't really matter. Movie exposure is manual. You have a manual and auto, definitely manual. I took the grids off this. Metering timer 16. Sound recording on. We're going to go over that in just a second. I turned the highlight tone priority off. And then this has to do with the photos. I've got my picture profile, Cinestyle, and then a flatter, like a profile that I made that's kind of in between the two, loaded onto here. So this thing does have quite a bit of features in the Magic Lantern build. So you can set this camera to sound recording on the Canon side of the menu. You don't have any manual controls, but with the Magic Lantern, you do. So you have all the way up to 32 decibel gain boost. You've got a digital gain. You've got your input source. Just leave that on auto. I've had some issues with an old T2i in the past. So if we go over to the shooting menu, you have all of the white balance tools that the T3i has, which is pretty awesome. You have your ISO, shutter. You've got it all right there. And then when we get over to the Magic Lantern Tools menu, Global Draw on, the zebras I pretty much leave 5% underexposure, anywhere from 90 to 95 overexposure, and then I hide it while I record. That's how I get my exposure a lot of the times. Focus peaking, nothing crazy. The 0.5 works good. I've got it on local. And then the magic zoom. So this is a cool feature about this magic lantern. I've got the magic zoom on zoom rec, full screen, focus box, 3:1, and green bars. The green bars really don't matter for full screen. But while you're recording, or before you record, you can use the Canon x5 and x10 zoom if you set it up like that. Okay, so with the magic lantern magic zoom, once you're recording, if you hit the zoom button, it just goes full screen 3x zoom, which even the Canon SL2 that I'm using as my A cam today, I can't zoom in while recording. So that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool feature. It works really good. That's just going to allow you to adjust your focus while you're shooting. So back in here, I turn everything else off. I do leave my false color set to that 67 to 72. I have pretty good luck with that. And then histogram, YUV based, and Luma, linear scaling, and then I turn the warning things off. And then this also has vector scopes if you want to set your white balance manually. So pretty crazy from a $30 camera. You've got your bitrate on the next screen, and I don't use any of those except for maybe the bitrate sometimes. But on the FPS override, you have some presets there for low light, exact FPS, low jello, and then high jello fast TV. So what this means is it automatically optimizes your camera for a 180-degree shutter angle. Let's go ahead and turn that false color off. But it does cut the sound recording off when you're using that, so I don't use it all of the time. Let's turn it off for today. Image fine tuning, you have absolute zero sharpness. You can turn off on this thing. I did a lot of testing with Moray and artifacting on my T2i the other day, and it definitely looks better with the absolute zero sharpness on for these two cameras. I don't know if it's the sensor. I don't really know all of the inside details of that, but I did quite a bit of testing with Moray and artifacting and just banding, and I pretty much messed with it all day. And all of the tests that I did, the absolute zero sharpness looked better. So quick little side quest there about that. And then I've got my movie tweaks for my time indicator to be time elapsed. I've got my movie restart off. I don't really like that. And then today I don't like it. Then I've got the shutter lock on, so that's just going to lock my shutter when I press record. And that's going to allow me to not accidentally raise my shutter speed up to like 1/250th of a second. And then I think that is it. But you have your regular stuff for photography here. You've got your, you can do your rack focuses here. I don't mess with that. I just normally manual focus. You can put digit peaking on. So this is kind of crazy. So if you're doing some like crazy macro stuff, you can use that digit peaking and get some really sharp focus, really precise focus. All of the normal stuff here, you can preview your D-fisheye, your anamorphic. It doesn't actually correct that stuff in the camera. I wish it did, especially for fisheye, but it'll let you have a little preview if you can stretch it out in the editor. And then you have the arrow set keys. I have the ISO Kelvin on, and that's just this feature right here. When you're right here, I can press that, the AV, and then I can get my white balance, or I can raise my ISO or lower it down. So that's why I leave that like that. I turn off the audio gain and the shutter and the aperture, and that's pretty much it. It'll record raw if you load the raw in there for like 6 seconds, and it looks awful. I looked at the bitrate the other day, and it was like 8K. So you're actually getting a better image out of the 8-bit versus the raw. So it's really not even worth messing with this camera. Again, I think Magic Lantern is more for getting more features out of your camera versus shooting raw. But that's mostly because I haven't figured out how to shoot raw well yet. So maybe just ignore that. And one other thing that I kind of forgot to mention during that whole rant was this thing's not really worth putting a monitor on. You might want to run this out to a cheap computer screen or something like that. But when you put an external monitor on these, it compresses the image. I'm not sure of the video quality that it's putting out with a monitor, but it's really low. It's borderline unusable. So if you're setting this up for like an inside talking head camera, just get you a cheap $50 monitor off of Amazon that's really big. That way you can use the HDMI, but running an external monitor like one designed for a camera is basically pointless. So anyway, so I do want to run external audio on this shot, so I'm using my Takstar SGC 598. This is a really cheap microphone, and with those audio controls, I should be able to get pretty good audio at 18 or 24 millimeters, whatever we decide to go with. Then I've got my gray card right there, and we'll set up this shot. And I'll quit talking, I promise, and do some talking head from the T2i. But let's set up our microphone. Test, 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 test. So 17 decibels seems to be the sweet spot for that. And I can talk pretty loud in it, not clip. So we are mic'd up. Let's raise this up just a little bit. I've got that gray card set where the crosshairs is about eye level for me. Okay, we've got our audio set, and I'm having a little bit of issue with the white balance in the shade here. It's giving me a crazy high white balance, but I don't want it to be too far off of what I've got my SL2 at, so I'm just going to set it up at about 6400. It's probably going to be a little bit on the cool side, but let's proceed to the root. And our entire sky back there is blown out. This thing does not have any dynamic range, but neither does the SL2 that we're shooting with. But let's see what this looks like. I'm focused right there. My aperture is at like f5.6, so I should be in focus for a while. Let's do a little tester shot. So, top of my head is probably out of this shot. It also looks like my camera is a little slanted. But this is footage from the T2i and audio from the T2i. So not bad. A little dark of an exposure. I can live with that. Let's zoom out just a little bit with this lens. Straighten the camera, refocus, and then raise our ISO just a little bit, and let's see what that looks like. Okay, this is from the T2i. It took a while to get to this shot. My white balance is definitely off. The sky behind me is gone, but I still think that this is a usable camera. You're getting 1080 and 24 and 30 frames per second. You have 720 and 60 frames per second. Again, I paid $30 plus some shipping, so really about $43 plus tax for this camera. And I've got focus peaking, I've got zebras, I've got a vector scope, I've got a histogram, I've got manual controls of my audio. The only thing that this thing really lacks is the flip out screen that the T2i has. But everything else, you can use it. And if you have a cheap white card and something that's the same height as you, or run your HDMI out to a big monitor, you can get focused pretty easily. You can get your shot set up pretty easily. It's kind of crazy how cheap these cameras are now. I hope these camera companies just keep pumping stuff out so that stuff just gets cheaper and cheaper. I saw an SL2 the other day for 180 bucks with a lens. So stuff is getting really cheap, and most people don't need 4K RAW, 10-bit, 12-bit, all that stuff. You don't really need it. At least I don't think you do. But let me know what you think about the T2i down in the comments section. Hit that like button. I'm struggling to get some likes and some comments, so definitely let me know what you think. Hit the like button. If you enjoyed this type of video, hit that subscribe button. That's it from me. I'll see you guys later.